one thing I do with my Minn Kota is every few months I do a 10-minute basic service on it. But the other thing I do is I tune them up a little bit so I get maximum performance out of the prop, and I'll show you how to do that in this video. Now, I spoke to a Minn Kota service rep years ago. In Brisbane, BLA have a Minn Kota service department, and I had a motor in there just getting a bit of a warranty repair on it, and he said to me that my shaft needs to be lubed up. And I've got to be honest, I've heard that before. But what he suggested was a little bit of Armour Oil, because it's a water-based silicone, and if you just put it on the shaft, it makes the world of difference. So the first thing I do when I'm doing a bit of maintenance is just lube up my shaft, I suppose. One of the better words put. Now the next step is to just take the prop off and just inspect that there's no fishing line or anything stuck around there. Well, this little Minn Kota's got a 13mm nut, but some of the Minn Kotas are 14mm nut or 9/16 or something like that, because they're most of them are American. Well, they're all American. Just pop that off and just be careful to grab that washer with it. And quick look in the shaft there. The coddle pin's nice and straight. There's no line or anything in there, and there's a little bit of grease still there. So I'm just going to put a tad more grease in there, but that's looking nice and clean, so I'm not going to do much of that at all. Now the next thing I want to do is start greasing all these little moving parts. Now when I release this Minn Kota, this pin here sits into the bottom bracket and locks the Minn Kota into position, and you just need to grease around this point here. Now there's some old grease, so the first thing I'm going to do is dig all that out and try to clean it all up. And then all I do, and look, there's millions of ways of doing it, but I dip an old Allen key or an old nut and bolt more than the nut, into a bit of grease, and then I just dab it around the side so I'm not whacking a whole heap of grease everywhere. You don't need much, you just need a little dab in there, and that's going to sort you out. So I'll get rid of all this old grease and I'll start re-greasing all these little bits. What we need to do next is just pull the side plate off, and where this stainless steel mechanism is here, just make sure that's nice and greased. So wipe all the old grease off, donate an old $2 tea towel to the job, and just give that a really good clean. And then once again, just in the moving joints, just put a dab of marine grease or high temperature grease. It doesn't really matter what I don't mind what grease I use, as long as it's good quality grease, because I know that in 3 or 4 months time I'm just going to wipe it off and put another dab on. So it doesn't need to be marine grease, but marine grease is probably better. And look, once that's all done, this side cover can go back on. This box here, that's my steering unit, so that is a sealed unit. If that ever needs to be replaced, it's just take that out, drop a new sealed steering unit in. But in the head up here, I've got some connectors that I'm just going to clean up. So once I've taken this head unit off here, once again I've got a completely sealed unit because this is all waterproof. On cheaper electric motors such as the water snakes and stuff like that, these are all open, and they're really open to all the elements, and these are a lot easier to repair because you just buy this whole mechanism all in one piece. But you can see here when I go close, I've got a bit of dirt, a bit of salt build up and stuff like that all throughout these wires here. I'm just going to give them a quick spray and a clean up. So I'm going to tune this engine to make it operate at its optimal speed. So a lot of the time the electric motor starts to get a bit noisy, and you'll probably notice that your blades, it's not as fast as what it used to be. So what you've got to do is you've got to get the prop off first, and this, just for these two nuts just here, if you can, don't have to take them all the way off, or not even don't have to take them all the way off, it's advisable not to. Just loosen them up. It won't take much to loosen them. Now that I can get that to turn nice and easily, I'm going to start the engine. I'm going to run it on about, say about 6 or 7, a fairly fast speed. And I'll get you to listen closely to that humming away there. And as I rotate that, it seems to be a bit slower. I'm just going to find my sweet spot. And the sweet spot seems to be right about there. That's where it's running quite well. I'll dial it up a little bit more just to double check it. I'll turn that off and I'll lock that back up, and that is the optimal spot for that electric motor to run in its best position there. These are really easy to repair, but this is just a maintenance thing. I don't repair them myself. I send them into Minn Kota to get repaired. This steering box has been replaced before, and if the head unit goes, you can replace the head unit as well. But look, once they're worn out, once they're getting old, it's up to you whether you want to spend the money on replacing all these bits, because that's $1,000 in itself. You're probably better off getting a new motor at some stage, but doing the maintenance on them keeps them running really well for as long as possible. And I reckon I get 6-7 years out of these things, and like I said, I use them all the time, so that's all you need to do.